Hello and everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Zeitguys, a podcast focused on the creation and analysis of culture, where we hope to discuss a variety of fields such as literature, film, music, and so on. And especially look forward to speaking with and promoting new and independent creatives in respective fields. I am Gallo, and I'll be your host for tonight. My co-host Alahiri unfortunately could not be with us tonight due to a work-related schedule issue. Tonight
Hmm.
we'll be discussing the Celtic fantasy book Crown of Blood, and we're joined tonight by one of the authors, Joe Krynn. Pleasure to have you with us. Would you like to say a little bit yourself?
Well, uh, Joe from Brothers Krynn, as you said. I typically write fantasy of all sorts and mythic epics. Though usually these days, when I'm not writing those in English for Substack and some Substack articles of some sort, I'm also frequently writing French stuff. Though I've yet to publish any of the French stuff because it's hard to get an editor for those. And I'm also over on YouTube these days doing the audio drama thing, ironically, of Crown of Blood.
Right. Yeah. And and it is Crown of Blood we're here discussing tonight. Now, this book, what actually inspired you and your brother to write it, Joe?
Well, there were two inspirations. One was Brotherhood of the Gemstone, which was a novel I wrote on my own, which was my attempt at writing a Lord of the Rings book. And the thing with that book is that it was a volume one. And as I was starting to work on volume two, I started work on the appendixes, and they were getting, well, it was going to be a bit of a nightmare.
Mhm.
And my brother had the idea, why write it as appendixes when you could just write it as separate books, as something like a promo to the OG, you know what I mean? And
So,
just build up to it.
that was leading to another question here. This was actually one sent to me by Ala Harry because he couldn't be here every night, but he did went through the book there himself when he could and had some questions that he passed along for me to read. The book here it reads. It's very interestingly written. It's set in like a fantasy version of Earth. Still very European history. Like it's generally set in
Mm.
lowland
Yep.
Scotland, I
Yep.
believe, and it's set during like a very Macbeth royal family internecine civil war, essentially, vying for the
Yeah.
crown.
And
Hence the hence the title of the book. Just to explain to the audience a summary of the events of the book, and the way you described it is that it's actually a dependence of it started life as an appendix to your other book. Uh, that helps explain the rather interesting way it's written, because Alahari's question here was what was essentially led to the decision to release as a collection of short stories before the main novel, and I believe you just answered that there.
yeah, it's because each king was going to have a long, extended couple of pages to himself, and Dan wanted me to expand on these things, but in a different manner. And our mother also weighed in and supported Daniel, and the idea stayed in my head, and I wasn't entirely sure how to approach every story on my own. So Daniel pitched in with his own ideas, and then everything began to go from there. And the damn thing was that I had to then revise some paragraphs in Gemstone to align better with Crown of Blood. Which damn you, Daniel, for doing that to me. But I joke. I love my brother to bits, but he gave me a bit of work with that. But what ended up happening is that he also made new characters and whatnot, and that gave us more ideas and stuff. But another inspiration for um, the story of Crown of Blood is the story of the War of the MacAlpins,
Mhm.
which is something that happens after Constantine the Second of Alba, or Scotland, who dies around 954, I believe. And the thing is, after Constantine dies, his throne is left to a bunch of weaklings and incompetents. And
Story of many a
the
dynasty in history.
Yeah, and well, his successor is an idiot who, rather than warring with a weakened England, chooses to war with his own vassals and dies doing it. And this leads to a lot of strong men in Scotland with different power bases, and all of them of the line of MacAlpin trying to claim the throne. It becomes a very interesting conflict, and it lasts for almost a century. It's bloody, and so this gave inspiration for the Crown of Blood. But the thing is, um, the gemstone story takes place almost 100 years after the beginning of this war. So what you have here is a conflict which, like I said, has two inspirations, which is the original book, but also actual history. So these two elements and influences combine together to form this book, which um, a friend came up with the title, Crown of Blood, and because he thought this was like a Kurosawa um, tragedy, and he imagined it like a Kurosawa shot drama, and I thought that was kind of interesting. So I went with his suggestion for the title, and that was Crown of Blood. And Daniel got the final say on the title. Like I often will say, I made this decision, but sometimes with certain things, like when it comes to managing the YouTube channel or managing the Substack, oftentimes Dan has a better head for business
Hmm.
and for public relations. So when I say, all right, I did this, and what do you think I should do this or this? And Dan will weigh in and say, we are doing that, Joseph. And then I go with that and I run it through.
So your
Like I
brother,
manage
so your brother,
affairs.
so your brother is actually better at the marketing aspect of the operation.
Yeah, in some ways. And I can manage the day-to-day affairs, but I defer to him
Mm.
on things like the title decision for Crown of Blood. I defer to him on the decision of um, when paying for promos. Uh, do we put $10 in or do we put $20 in? Dan will decide,
Hmm.
and that's where I like that, because now I tend to lay him down to him all the pros and cons of both sides, and then he says, I want that.
Yeah,
We need to do it that way, Joseph, and then I do it that way. But other times I do the split second decision, and then I consult with him,
yeah,
and he'll say whether he liked it or not. But if it's too late, he'll say, well, whatever, we'll just proceed ahead. Oftentimes we're usually of one mind on these things, but a lot of times not. But we don't argue about any of the decisions. With Crown of Blood, when it came time for the production of the short stories,
yeah.
there was a lot of arguments, but more of the creative sort. But ultimately, um, ultimately, though, every argument was diffused as Dan got hyper focused on writing some of these short stories in the best way possible, and I got hyper focused as well.
Hmm.
And we barreled forward, and like when I say arguments, no one threw anything. It was more like a little cussing, and then, well, why don't we just go ahead and do this?
Yeah.
Well, fine. And he just gets to work, and then I get to work, and then he goes, wait, hold on, what about this? Well, okay, well, we'll get to that when we get to it, and you know. So, Crown of Blood was very much a project I was very relieved to have a partner on, because sometimes Dan has projects he'll work on his own, and I have projects I'll work on my own. But a project like this was a lot easier for me,
Yeah.
um, to work with a partner on, because it allowed me to split the labor in two. Because Dan understands the world I built up since I was 14 as good as anyone can, and sometimes he just put like, oh, bracket lore here, and he said, I don't know what you're thinking with your lore here. Just make some up for me, Joe, and go.
Yeah.
So I have to fill the lore section, and he's moving on to an action scene, and yeah. So the writing process was a lot of fun.
That does sound like quite a process there, and
Mm.
the collaborative aspect of there actually does seem like a very good working relationship there between you and your brother there, with your different differences to different areas of expertise. But
Mm.
the reference there to that you mentioned there, that how your friend said it had a very Kurosawa feel, hence the title. I actually that's an interesting perspective on the Crown of Blood story as the Kurosawa films. I didn't get that myself. Like I said before in the introduction, there was talking about the book. I got a more of a Shakespearean Macbeth feel.
Yeah,
Obviously,
because it was. Oh, sorry.
yeah, I got a more of a Shakespearean feel of the whole setting, mostly because it did come across as being written as a kind of a stage play with the dramatis persona and such like that, and
It
the
was.
the different acts. So I got comparisons to Macbeth and
Mhm.
other such tragedies. But I had a question myself there about the world itself. There, you mentioned it's very clearly a kind of low fantasy. Like there's references here to centaurs and dwarves, and interesting from
Mhm.
my own perspective because like I've done a lot of world building myself in my writing. The world itself, despite being effectively this more or less the same as Earth, but with like some fantasy elements, has seems to have like two suns. Like a lot of like little things like that that would just catch you off guard while reading the book because you would otherwise think it was just a different timeline of Earth otherwise. But it's very clear there's more going on here.
It's supposed to be a secondary world, but it's also supposed to be um, a antediluvian kind of Earth. But it's kind of built like the Hyborian Age or like Arda, in that there's two suns right now, but um, I'll have to resolve that problem later, and I've already got a solution kind of in mind for it. But it's also inspired by a lot of the ideas of cyclical history and whatnot, by taking it in a literal direction in some ways,
So
which
ver-
that will be revealed in prophecy and other um, tales and whatnot. But as far as the Shakespearean and um, play element goes, the story was imagined with Macbeth, the play of Macbeth, and
mhm.
the play of Richard II
Yeah,
uh, as kind of inspirations, along with Henry IV.
definitely got those
And
feels from reading the book. Yeah.
yeah, Dan and I may be French Canadians, but we are like we were raised in a French part of Ontario, which is more Quebecois than Quebec,
Hmm.
but we in our families were just purely Quebecois. Like our culture is purely like Quebecois French.
Yeah.
But we were raised on with a huge interest in Shakespeare. So, you could see the influence because the book is um I think each short story has its own kind of inspiration taken from him.
Yeah, that's definitely what I definitely picked up on that while going through it there myself. Um, Another thing, this is actually from Alahari here, that there's very obviously some heavy stylistic influences from the medieval chronicles and the way they told their stories. Like, what other
Yep.
influences on the style of the book did you have other than those obvious influences and Shakespeare, as we said, or Kurosawa and so on?
Well, let me see. I was reading Chaucer at one point. That
Oh,
was of interest to me.
always a
There was the
good classic.
there was some what was it? I was doing research at one point on a grad paper on the medieval perception of Macbeth as the king of Alba or Scotland,
Mm-hmm.
and I had to read a lot of literary and historic sources of Scotland and Ireland. So a lot of those sources and chronicles, and I got the book at home in Canada. I couldn't bring it with me to France, sadly. I didn't have room.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, it's a big, like 1,500-page book on primary sources of Scotland, uh, which compiles Irish records, Welsh records, and Scottish records, and even the Anglo-Saxon chronicles, just all compiled together for the 10th and 11th century. And I have a bunch of other secondary sources, but a lot of the primary sources of Scotland of the Alpine McAlpin period served as inspiration for these stories. There was also this website with a lot of fairy tales and fairy stories and whatnot of Scotland that served as an interest. There's a Gallo Romance fairy story book, mostly folk tales and fairy tales that helped inspire, and it's taken from several centuries of Scottish um, and Ulster fairies and folk tales. Um, and of course, there was my great hero, Chrétien de Troyes, who served as a bit of inspiration.
Hmm.
Um, there's of course Roland. Les Gestes de Roland is one of my, or Chanson de Roland, as some call it, is a favorite of mine. I love that story. And there's a bit of the Odyssey because I can. Homer has a huge influence on me. So I love medieval and ancient literature. So oftentimes, if I'm unaware of pop culture, pop lit, or like tropes from the past 20 years, it's because I've not been paying attention. Because I might go a year or two without reading anything that's new. And I'm just reading nothing but medieval and ancient literature. And I derive a lot of my tropes from those. Daniel loves video games. So he's a little more in the know than I am, but he also reads similar stuff. And um, Daniel also loves a lot of anime and loves certain kinds of movies. So you can kind of see that in the Final Supper and Brother Against Brother.
Yeah.
So some of that influence is there. It's just in a different kind of um, manner than mine. One moment.
Yeah.
Um,
You were saying there before that a lot of the actual meta stasis of the actual story, overarching story, is like dealing with cyclical history and a very antediluvian world. That immediately came to mind when you mentioned that. What immediately came to mind was obviously Robert E. Howard's famous Conan the Barbarian, which is his entire thing is that was essentially uh, everything was its cyclical history. That was an antediluvian world, and all the nations and races of that world were actually just antecedents of nations and races of our world. Is it seems like you're taking a different approach to that because the nations and
yeah,
races of this world seem to have more or less coalesced in the same manner they did in our world in the same timelines as our world, and it's more or less a literal cycle rather than just cyclical.
yep. But
So
there's also a larger continent, and there are nations that are not historical. There's the various elf kingdoms, and there's the various dwarvish kingdoms, and uh, wolfram kingdoms, and the ogre kingdom. And well, there's two principal ogre kingdoms and whatnot. But
so
yes, generally, I'm taking a kind of perspective on the thing with a bit of Tolkienian influence over it.
yeah, that definitely that definitely seems more of a Tolkien influence there, where Middle Earth was also kind of an antediluvian Earth, or at least that was the conceit Tolkien wrote, that he was like he was writing this book as if he discovered these ancient records and such of this ancient lost period of history. And yeah,
Yeah.
I could definitely see that approach there. I'll ask another question from Alahari rather than my one. And this one is actually more or less from the both of us there, because we're reading through there. Like you mentioned there, you read through a lot of like Irish, Welsh, and Scottish records of the MacAlpine period of Scottish history, as well as fairy tale influences.
Mhm.
And correcting the Traw, and everyone loves Arthuriana. God knows I do. Uh,
Mhm.
this is more of a curiosity to us. What actually inspired you to choose the name of Brett Walda for the whole Isle of Britain? Because that's a very curious choice for the Scottish to call it.
Well, the title of Bretwa Alda, Walda, or something like that, is actually means Lord of the Island of Great Britain.
Yes, the reason why
So,
we asked that, because it's a Saxon term, which is why it's interesting.
but see, here's the thing: the island's going to have a name change later,
Okay.
and I can't say what it is. So, um, but the thing is, the island is called Bretwialda by the people in the south more than the north.
Well, that
Uh,
make
the, the northern name is going to be used as a plot point in a
oh
later. So the linguistic is actually important to the plot, and it's part of a plot twist we're kind of building up towards with a series of novels that will be called the Lionsgate Wars, and it yeah, I've already revealed quite a bit because Dan doesn't really want me to talk about the Lionsgate Wars too much. But the thing is, these sort of things are building up towards it. But it is a Saxon term more than it is anything else. But the idea is that everyone seeks to be, like, at least within Caledonia and Britia, to be lord of the Lordly Isle or the Lairdly Isle.
Yep.
And this is present as a theme and ideas within Brotherhood of the Gemstone. Although in Gemstone, the kings of Britia and the kings of Caledonia do not seek war with each other because they have a much bigger issue in the Dark Laird, who's looming on the horizon.
Yes. Okay. So there actually is a Dark Lord in Gemstone that leads to this. This
Yeah,
whole this whole coming calamity that's going to affect the entire isle and possibly beyond.
yeah.
All right, that's interesting. That explains like the so this entire thing is essentially like you said, a collection of short stories and an annex to the wider story of Gemstone coming along the way, and it's basically going to serve as a reference point for the origin of like all the plot points in the future stories.
Um, Quite a few of them. I've also got a French series which I'm trying to get bloody published, but it's hard. And that one serves to explain other plot points not explained in the Scottish story.
Right.
And the French story also takes place over the course of 100 or so years and explains everything that's happening on the continent. You know what I mean? Like, that's happening away from the events of this story. And but this will explain everything that has to do with Caledonia, which is the most important part of Brotherhood of the Gemstone,
Mm-hmm.
because Caledonia is, well, almost all the leads of Brotherhood of the Gemstone are Callants. They're basically Scots.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's kind of important that we introduce this part of the world as it's very, very important to us.
For the main story of Gemstone, yeah.
Yeah.
So whenever you guys finally release Gemstone, it would be interesting. Looking forward after reading Crown of Blood. What stylistic differences should people expect between the collection of stories we see in Crown of Blood versus Gemstone? Will it be written in the same way, or will it be more of a traditional novel way it's written, or how's it, or do you plan to do anything with that?
Gemstone's more a traditional novel, but Volume One's a doorstopper. It's very long, and it's written in a style that is very Victorian, like this one, but also very, very um, different. For example, this one focuses on the tragedies that haunt the kings of the Khalids. Each king in Crown of Blood Volume 1 and even Volume 2, which will be coming out in the middle of 2026,
Mm-hmm.
um, are very unfortunate. And like, I've had fans say on Substack that they are cursed. Um, I can't comment on whether the crown actually has a curse or not, but the thing is, the stylistics of these short stories is meant to be, I don't want to say too short, but like, um, I guess short and sweet to an extent, but it's not, how do I put it? In Gemstone, everything is stretched out,
Mm-hmm.
like Lord of the Rings. It's supposed to be a longer tale in that, well, it's going to be over the course of a single year, Gemstone, but the story is longer. The story is more encompassing, and it spans from Caledonia to Britia to Gallia and to the Isle of Antilia. And but the Crown of Blood story is contained to only Caledonia. So we do a lot. We're able to also do a lot more world building with Gemstone in some ways, in a Tolkienian style. But with Crown of Blood, we are able to do more in terms of introducing these kings who are, in essence, how shall I put it? Um, we're able to flesh out characters who are only names in Gemstone. You know what I mean?
Yes, I understand. One things would be references to Gemstone would actually have a personality and a history in Crown of Blood.
Yeah. And like obviously Simon from Crown of Blood, very important character.
Yeah,
He has a few songs, he's referenced as a great king,
the Thistle
but
King.
yes, the Thistle King, which was actually a title of James the Fourth of
Int-
Scotland.
Interesting. Okay.
But, but we decided to put it I was inspired by the story of James the Fourth and decided to put him into the McAlpin period. And then I had an entire idea of making him this magnificent Arthurian type figure. Who, but then the minute I realized I made such a character, and he's referenced constantly in Gemstone, I realized he became larger than life in some ways.
like
And
like King Arthur.
yeah, and so the characters start speaking more and more of him in awe and whatnot. And the current occupant of the throne often asks himself, "What would the Thistle King do?" Like, and characters even in Britia will say, "What would he do?" Because he became such a dominant, uh, such an incredible character. But the thing is, um, like he's built up in such a way. But what I liked in Crown of Blood is that we're able to flesh him out. We're able to see him, uh, you know, grow. Actually, one of the things is that Dan was the one who put him into Final Supper as what was it, a 7 or 8 year old child or 9 year old child or something.
Yeah.
And I really like that because I like Dragon Ball, for example, for the fact that we see Goku go from 6 year old to like 30-some-year-old. I like it that we get to see him grow up. We
Yeah.
grow with him. So I really like that idea. So that made its way in, and I really liked seeing him go from nothing to this
To
great king.
yeah, that's definitely a huge appeal to that. Uh, probably you probably wouldn't have been able to do that unless you did have the short story format, unless you were like want to write
Yeah,
right. It's literally just several books of just the Thistle King himself, which probably would be interesting, but the Thanos Slayer Wars is like over a century long, and he only had 20 years of peaceful rule himself, so don't know if you could do that.
yeah, and that's basically it. And so these two stories will be written very differently. Um, Same with one silly little novel, which is a bit of an interquel between Crown of Blood Part 2 and Gemstone,
Hmm.
which just fleshes out a few details about the High King in Gemstone. But the thing is, like, each story is written differently, but is meant to flesh out elements in the timeline a little.
Yeah.
Because I like fleshing out the different characters and whatnot, and fleshing out the world, really.
So you're more character focused rather than world building focused.
I'm more world building focused than character focused.
All right.
But
Okay.
the
So
thing is,
yeah, go on.
I regard the characters as part of the world, but before I ever started writing any of these stories, I was building the world.
Hmm.
And the characters, I shouldn't say this, but are semi-incidental. They're I don't want to say tools, but they're means by which I might explore the world and the history and present the history. But that being said, I like the characters, but I need them to constantly be growing. And when they stop growing, I need to give them an ending. Because for me, if there's no ending, I'm bored.
Huh.
And I, yeah, like I said, I just really like the idea of world building and a lot of the stories like my Calibog novel or one integral novel here and there between Crown of Blood and Gemstone. A lot of these are used to world build, but also introduce background characters or characters who are referenced in Gemstone, so that people know the history
Hmm.
to the Gemstone story, which is a major novel. And at the time that I was writing it, that was the furthest point in the timeline I had gone. But now I've been starting to write stories that take place like 200 years later.
Hmm.
And the thing is, the idea is that the furthest point in the history will be the Lionsgate Wars, and everything else is leading up to that. But
You can't really talk
Um,
can't really talk too much about that, as Dan says, unfortunately.
yeah, I'll get in trouble if I do.
All right, but okay, so this is all the prelude, both this and the eventual volume 2 of Crown of Blood, which just out of curiosity, can we expect Crown of Blood volume 2 sometime this year, maybe? Or
Yep,
can you share with the audience roughly when we can expect that?
I'm hoping around May or June.
All right, well, you heard it here first, folks. May or June. All right.
Because we already finished the first draft of it. Well, actually, we finished technically draft number 4. All that's finished that needs finishing is the poems and to send it to the editor,
All right,
and
well,
then it'll.
that's okay. Well, that's good because poetry actually does need to be double checked and triple checked because it's harder to get poems right than prose, generally speaking. Uh,
Yeah,
go on. Sorry, go on.
no, I simply said yeah.
All right, I was just gonna question. This is another question from Alahiri here. Rather than one of my own. When you're writing the Crown of Blood and the short stories. Is there any particular short story that was your particular favorite, either to write itself or the way it fits into the story is your favorite?
Hmm, that's a tough one. All right. Uh, at the time of writing, um, okay, when we were first writing, um, the one that was my favorite to write at first was the Black Crow Fields.
Mm-hmm.
I quite liked that one due to the poetry of the story. When I say the poetry, I mean the way it moved and it felt. At the first, I was determined that Padraig was irredeemable. Like I didn't, I was like, he's gonna go down in a dastardly manner. But then I swerved when I was writing it. Like
Mm-hmm.
it just, we were writing it, and I took in there was just a sudden moment, and I realized, and I had to take him in a different direction. And it was then, and I did it as a split second decision, and he's Dan's character in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Because while I had him in my appendixes, Dan fleshed him out a lot more with Final Supper and with some of the ensuing stories. And what happened was that I then had the pleasure of characterizing him in The Death of Two Kings and in Black Crow Fields. But in his last moments, I made the decision to kill him off the way I did.
Mm-hmm.
And when I presented that to Daniel, Daniel was enthralled. He loved it. I was worried because I didn't want to upset him, and I was prepared to rewrite the ending. Daniel was immensely pleased.
Uh,
But I think my favorite, oddly, was A Dagger of the Night.
mm-hmm.
It was the most tragic to me. Um, Mostly because, now the funniest was the Three Queen one with Armleb the second. It was just so silly and ridiculous. I had fun with it, but my favorite was Dagger in the Night because of the tragedy. Armleb the Fat was someone who just wanted everyone to be happy,
Uh-huh.
and he could make everyone happy. Like he had a gift. Everyone loved him, but he could not make himself happy after his wife dies,
Ah.
and it breaks him. And as a writer, it broke my heart to do that to him. And when like when he loses his wife, I was like, oh, that poor guy. And when I was writing him as utterly catatonic and utterly desolated with the world, he has no more joy in his heart. But he keeps ruling really well. Like he keeps making sure his people are happy, and his people are getting happier. But he's becoming more miserable, and he's getting fatter, and he's getting more self-loathing, and he's just bereft. I really love that story, and the way I wrote it at first was different in some ways, and the way the scenes were put together than how it turned out. Daniel took one read at it and said, "I don't like this. I don't know. There's something that sticks out to me." So I, I moved around all the scenes, and we suddenly have much more emphasis on the stable, and as he's lying dying, and as he's trying to reclaim the necklace of his wife. And Daniel said, I like that. And I liked it better that way too. But Dan then said something really that got to me was, oh, did you have to be so cruel to him? Because Dan has a bit of a soft heart at times. And Dan said, did you have to be so cruel to him? Poor Omelette, you gave him no joy. And I said, yeah, I guess I didn't. Um, but I really, really liked that story. Daniel's favorite two stories, his favorite to write was Final Supper.
Mm-hmm.
He really loved writing the scene with uh, Domhnall when Domhnall throws his crown and he's like, for the sake of this sick and dying old man, will you not make peace? His final plea to everyone. But he
Yeah.
also loved the Black Row Fields. I think his favorite is Black Row Fields because of the Bloody Padre death scene.
So that's both your favorites. One of your favorites.
That's one of mine. My favorite's Dagger in the Night. Daniel's favorite is, I think, Black Row Fields. But yeah.
All right. And this is more of a logistic issue. There, I know these collection of short stories was a collaboration between with yourself and your brother, with some input from your other friends and family, as you mentioned. But this is more of a curious thing because some of these stories have rather large casts. How difficult was it for both you and Dan to juggle and balance that and keep everything straight, essentially?
Well, at first it wasn't very easy.
Especially with
The first
especially with how
story,
short these stories were. Yeah.
the in the Valley of the Dark River was hard to keep track of everyone, and I just by the end of it, I was just screw it, I'll just kill everyone except Rory, and it was what I did. I was gonna have a few more characters survive, but then I just said, I'm gonna kill everyone because I'm tired of this cast. I kill everyone. And then we get to Final Supper, and Dan's just like, "You're not killing my guys. I'm enjoying this." But then the joke is in The Man Who Fought Himself King, I basically off screen killed his entire cast, which Dan thought that was hilarious. But Dan also said, okay, you got to stop killing my guys. But in all seriousness, with The Man Who Fought Himself King, we had a much shorter, smaller cast. Same with Brother Against Brother and In the Shadow of the Long Woods. But it's when we get to um, the middle stories with In Hallowed Halls and Two Kings and Black Row Fields, we have again this humongous cast of characters.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing with the larger cast, with this mega cast, is that by then I had Dan go through every story that we were writing and make a dramatis personae,
Mm-hmm.
a character list,
Yeah.
so that we can just keep track of everyone because it was getting hard. And so we basically just made um, like I'd go through a story and I'd come up with a few. I'd list some of the characters and send it to him, and he compiled all the lists. But he did the lion's share of the work of making the list of characters. And by the time we were done, we had an entire list. We said, "All right, these are all of our characters." And almost before we even started on part two, Dan was helping with some of the character lists. So some of the logistics there, you could thank Daniel. He helped a lot. Um, but it didn't help because I'm also a gardener in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So like I'll come up with a character on the spot and I'll say, all right, I got a guy. And Dan at one point was annoyed because he's just like, oh, did you have to make up another three guys? Sorry. Yeah. So I'm like, I come up with three barons who suddenly appear. Like more Homer, the Mormer of Call, just came on the spot to me. And Dan just when Homer first appeared, he was like, "Oh, I love that name, but why the did you make me another Mormer?" And I'm going, "Well, I needed a guy. We already have enough guys. Why'd you make another one? Just reuse a character." Okay. So then, I reuse some characters, and then I suddenly, without realizing it, make another four. And Dan's going, "You made another four, great." But then Dan goes and writes a story, and he comes up with like two characters, and I'm going, "Yeah, like you're any better." Um, but yeah, so generally, Dan had the logistical nightmare of trying to compile these lists while I keep adding, and it was a bit of a funny little joke, I guess, but not exactly a joke. But
So
the
what you're saying is that we have largely yourself to blame for the large casts.
yes,
All
yeah,
right. Well, thank you for that confusion, because some of them have the same names, and that's not confusing at all.
that was Dan at times. Dan also liked to do that to try to confuse and throw me off a few times,
So he's trying to trick you to kill one of your own guys rather than his guy.
probably. But he also liked the name Nickel, so he wanted to reuse Nickel for some weird reason. I didn't care for the name, but I decided I would not kill off the second Nickel because I killed off the first one. Dan really liked the first one, didn't care about the second one, so I decided to keep the second one alive. Um, I don't know why. It just turned out that way. But then, like, um, there were one or two characters Dan said I really want them to live, and I just killed them off. But then there was like one or two where I said I want this guy to live, and Dan still killed him off. So yeah, but generally, yeah, some guys have the same name because we're thinking in dynastic terms, and in that way, it the same name reappears in dynastic lineages.
Over and over again. Yeah, that's true. Um, some
Mhm.
are very bad about it, like especially France with its Louise.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Yeah.
And I know. And the thing is also that the reason some of the names reappear is also um, we early on had a discussion about whether we'd reuse names, and we decided we would. And part of it was, as I put it, I don't want to treat my readers like they're stupid
Mm-hmm.
because it's always said by publishers, editors, and marketers, your readers will never remember the same a character if he has the same name as another character. Or like if you've got 300 years ago there was a Cormac, so
Mm-hmm.
you can't name your main character Cormac because they'll confuse him with a guy from 300 years ago. I said, but that's bullshit. Readers are smart. I'm not going to treat my readers like they're stupid.
Mm-hmm.
So you might see Nickel as a name reappear, but if you get confused, that's why there's the character list.
Right.
But at the same time, I will re-describe the character over and over again so that you remember him. But the thing is, in my view, getting confused doesn't mean you're stupid. The thing is, it's natural. But on the other hand, um, I've met a lot of readers who have really good memories. Like you look at the Tolkien and Howard fan base, there are people who can remember the entire history of those worlds
Yeah.
off the top of their heads. So that's why, like Dan and I decided we wouldn't treat our readers like they're stupid, and decided we would treat them with respect and say we can reuse names. Our readers will remember. We'll just trust that our readers will find a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We'll trust them.
So
And
so you definitely have respect for readers' intelligence, and you're writing your story from that perspective. You're expecting them to
yeah,
be able to think and be able to recall things.
yeah, and even if they can't, we decide to help them out by, like I said, constantly referencing certain characters, like as redescribing them, and like, oh, this guy's the lord of this place. We keep mentioning it, and we also keep bringing in the dramatis personae throughout the book because like if they need the reference.
Mm-hmm.
So like, but yeah,
All right. Well, another question I had here. This is one of my own rather than Larry's. You mentioned well, you mentioned before that this is all a prelude going leading up to the Brotherhood of the Gemstone, and that, and it's a bunch of other series of constellation of books, I should say, in this setting, such as the French book you alluded to earlier that you're looking for a publisher for, leading up to the Lionsgate Wars, which we're not supposed to talk about. Um, this is more of a speculative thing, and I know you and your brother Dan clearly have plans laid out for these several books. So what's roughly the roadmap we could expect? We already have Crown of Blood, and Crown of Blood 2, as you alluded to, would be released around May or March, hopefully, if everything goes well, God willing. When would we actually be able to see the main book, Gemstone Wars, the Brother of the Gemstone?
I want it out this year, but it's a beast because it's been written since about 2023, I think it was. I had a health scare, so
Mm-hmm.
it was around that time. I didn't know if I was going to survive or not, so I poured everything into that book. And I've been trying to get it published for like 3 years now, and it's a nightmare of a process because um, trying to get an editor for it has been. I lined up an editor, then he just didn't want to do it anymore
Oh.
after a bit, and then um, and the thing is, um, I tried getting a publisher at one point. That's not worked out, um, and so if the thing is, it's very long, the first volume, and I need to, well, for one thing, save up for an editor. Um, so what I would like to see is either the end of 2026 or start of 2027 thereabouts. That's what I'd like to see, but at latest mid 2027. But my plan is to, um, given how successful our new YouTube channel is getting to be, and um, my next job is going to pay a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
My hope is we'll be able to save up money over the course of several months to actually pay for an editor at long last to just get to work on this thing over the course of maybe 3, 4 months and revise this thing and redraft and revise and edit again the whole darn thing. Because I've edited it myself about 7, 8 times since I finished the what I thought was the final draft, but it's now like in draft 20.
Ha.
And the damn thing needs to get out because I am starting to hate this thing. I'm joking. It's just
No,
sitting on it has just been annoying to me. But I really want it out for fans because I'm sick of dealing with it. Let
uh,
them deal with it.
anyone who's had a long going writing project knows exactly what you mean by starting to hate it. You don't need to explain yourself here. Speaking of your YouTube channel, your audio drama about Crown of Blood, tell us a bit about that.
Well, we have our friend Matt from the Dork Lords who was kind enough for free to do the audio narration. And we then get various fans and friends from Substack who, and from my Discord who pitch in and um, they do the voices. You do Kettle,
Mm-hmm.
one of the lead roles of Crown of Blood, which I'm very grateful to you for.
Not a bother. I was happy
And
happy to volunteer for it.
you did a great job. And the thing is, um, the drama is currently at Brother Against Brother, which is the story of where we introduce the main villain of the story, Kenneth, or Kenneth II, to differentiate him from Kenneth I, who was a good and noble king, but Kenneth II is not. And Brother Against Brother is a sword and sorcery short story. It's the only sword and sorcery story of the anthology,
Mm-hmm.
and it is, come on, Zil. It's That's where we're at, and it's also the story of a father trying to save his son. As Einar, the lead, is someone dealing with the court politics as a guard, and then he has to, his son gets kidnapped, so he has to try to rescue his son Eric. Um, and so you have also that little bond there. Einar, interestingly enough, was inspired by Jango Fett as a character, just as Eric is inspired to an extent by Boba Fett.
Okay.
And
Interesting.
yeah, yeah, except we made it totally different because we were also inspired by Viking Norse sagas and stuff. And um, so Einar, uh, currently he's being voiced by Hank. I forgot his surname. I'm bad with real people's names in the modern world. History names I can remember is just everything else I can't. But he manages, I think it's Virtual Pulp,
Right.
a website which does critiques, and he's a very successful writer himself. But he likes sword and sorcery, so he was eager to volunteer to provide the voice of Einar. Um, We have one of our regular voice actors who's also a writer of Sword and Sorcery, Austin Boucher, who's doing the voice of Kenned II. Kenned is, well, Austin was doing a few heroic voices
Hang on a second.
here and there throughout the audio drama, but then I proposed to him to do the, oh,
Sorry.
apologies.
No, it's just sort of audio issues. Sorry, continue now. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Austin was happy to provide the voice for Kenneth because he really wanted to do the villain. Because, like I said, would you like to do the villain? I know I usually get you to do a hero or a side character, but he said, "Oh no, I want the villain. This is going to be fun." So he's now doing the main villain, and um, yeah. But the funnest part will be that, um, uh, well, just ending the damn thing eventually. But so far, we did it more as a, well, there's a few other people doing their own audio dramas. We'll join in. And after a while, um, when the channel didn't immediately pick up, I kind of forgot about it and just started treating it like a chore. Like, okay, I got the audio in, I edited, I revised, I upgraded the audio, I put it all together, put the video together, upload, it'll publish when it publishes. All right, we'll promote, put up the money for a promo, done, and but not very much, like $10 or $20, and just, you know what I mean? Forget about it.
Yeah.
So what's funny is that for the channel, it's been it was 7 months that I forgot about the channel, even as I was uploading regularly.
Mm-hmm.
I even sometimes forgot I had uploaded, and I'd sometimes double check just to see if I did, and or Dan would double check, and we didn't really pay attention to much about it. I actually had to be reminded by some people I had that channel, even as I was uploading, and they thought it was the funniest thing. But about um, in mid January this year, around the 13th, I remember very distinctly it was on the 13th. Don't I just click on something, and because my computer is all screwed up, it's slow, and it takes me back to the main studio page of the YouTube channel. I'm getting angry when I notice we had jumped up by 1,000 subs.
Yeah.
And, I was shocked. And now it's jumped up even more, and I'm still flabbergasted and trying to figure out how that happened. But
Well, nothing to complain about. Everyone would love that sort of promotion.
yeah. And when you jump up by 4,500 subs, you then go, well, okay, I'm game, but I'm wondering what just happened. What are you doing, YouTube? But ironically, someone who reviewed Crown of Blood a while back was very nice to me, because I said I didn't think it would get me. I had forgotten about it, and I didn't think people would care about the audio drama, but people really like the audio drama of it. And she said, "Well, of course, it's very well written," which, okay, I thanked her, and I was moved by that comment, and I said, "Okay, thank you." Um, And the thing is, the audio drama is proving much more popular than the physical copy. Although the physical copy has sold about more than 300 copies, I think it's headed towards 400 copies sold. Which most books only sell 12 copies, so I'm pretty pleased with the amount of sales that it's sold. But yeah, so the audio drama has been more popular and successful than I thought it would be.
That's always good to have, and that's great to hear. Hopefully, this
Yeah.
will lead to further sales of the Crown of Blood, and also serve as a springboard for, having a fan base ready and willing to look forward to Brother of the Gemstone and your further works.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, definitely.
All right. I'm gonna toss it to the viewers here. We've only got a few viewers, unfortunately, but ask them if any of the viewers here have any questions for myself or for Joe here, and we'll just leave them that for a second. So with the audio drama, given its success, would you potentially consider an audio drama of Brother of the Gemstone after it comes out as well, or to wait and see how it goes?
I'm planning to do one.
Oh, so
Yeah,
you're absolutely gonna do it there as
yeah,
well.
absolutely. I have to
What?
because currently I'm planning. Just the cough. Um, it's just there's a bug going around in the corner of house I'm in. But currently the plan is that we have Crown of Blood, which we're going to produce part one and part two into an audio drama.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to call it part one and part two because we're also going to re-release the book as an omnibus, like with both parts
Mm-hmm.
as a completed saga. But the audio drama is just going to keep pushing forward into part two, just keep going until it's finished. But the plan is to have, um, for a short time, starting in April, uh, a novel of mine, which is only currently available on Royal Road and on Substack behind a paywall, but that's only because it's been months since it was put up there,
Mm-hmm.
called Wormsbane. And it's an English novel which takes place around the time of the start of Crown of Blood, but in a very small corner of, um, well, around the time of the start of Crown of Blood. But Wormsbane is a story where it's about slaying a dragon.
Mm-hmm.
Three knights and a dog get together to go kill a dragon, basically. It's fun.
3 nights and a
Um,
dog. That sounds like a good old boys time.
well, yeah, it's a lad's adventure novel, is what it is. But the thing is, that story, I'm currently putting the cast together for a short audio drama of it because it's only about 120 or 140 pages. It's not very long. So we're going to run that from April till August. And then we're going to have the Dark Spire Conspiracy,
Mm-hmm.
which is another Tolkienian style epic, which is only 400 pages long for the first volume. And I'm going to start writing the second volume once I finish some of my other novels. And Darkspire Conspiracy Part 2 is going to be a little longer. And I'm hoping to stop it at a duology. I don't want a trilogy of that story. I really honestly don't. But the Darkspire Conspiracy will be the other audio drama until we can get Bloody Gemstone produced,
Mm-hmm.
like the full, like the first book finished. But the idea is to have Darkspire, which was now on Substack. I was writing essays, and the thing is, I wasn't taking off until I published the first few chapters of a story called The Darkspire Conspiracy. Chapter one got 700 views, um, and about like 20 or 30 comments and whatnot on Substack, which is very odd for a Substack story.
Mm-hmm.
Like the fiction corner doesn't usually, you know what I mean? Fiction on Substack doesn't usually get that kind of
Yeah.
thing, and it got me like 200 subs or something. Like it got me innumerable amount of subs, and so that's when I started growing exponentially on Substack. So like this thing was part of my what got Dan and I our start. So for us, Darkspire made a natural choice to so it was a natural choice for us to select as a between like because we want to run two audio dramas at the same time, but it's a natural choice between as a placeholder between now and Gemstone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not Gemstone, it's not of the same quality, but it's just shy of it. So we might as well run it and use it to tide people over and gain an audience and whatnot until, it's a big story, but it's not Gemstone big. And so we're just going to use it. I don't want to say to placate the fans, but put it out there because it is a major story. And um, then when Crown of Blood finishes its run, because we want to run two concurrent stories at all times after April,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to have Darkspire and Crown of Blood. Crown of Blood finishes, then Gemstone will start.
Okay.
That's the plan. Darkspire finishes. What I'm probably going to do is then either open up the floor for a few friends to run their novels as audio dramas, and I post it on the YouTube channel, and or I'll just do little novelettes that I've written here and there as um, running alongside Gemstone, um, one or the other, and that way if I run like Therese Judina, a friend of mine's novel,
Mm-hmm.
her Wingswept, or some other friend's fantasy novel, it would be more as a favor and as me wanting to support their writing.
That's
Um,
always good to support your friends.
yeah, because like Therese, she's done the voice of Ela in the audio drama.
Mm-hmm.
She's provided the cover for my Kallenbulg novel, because she's not just a voice actress and an amazing writer. She's also an artist and whatnot.
Yeah.
But she's also going to do the main role. She's going to be doing two main roles: the love interest in Wormsbane, and she's going to be doing the main character voice of Darkspire Conspiracy. Um,
Interesting.
so yeah, I have a recurring cast that are starting to crop up in my audio dramas.
That's always good to have. And we do have
Mhm.
one question here. This is from Evil Florida.
Yay!
This is from Evil Florida, a regular of the podcast. He asks, "How willing are you for an extended universe by other random authors like Lovecraft Masters or something? Is it a curated selection of authors? And if so, any general rules you expect of the verse? So basically, like the Lovecraftian mythos, would you be comfortable with other authors writing stories set in your setting, or would you and Dan be a bit more tentative of that?"
Hmm. Well, interestingly, this is a conversation we've started to have with some other authors. Um, Therese and I have discussed writing in each other's world. Like I might write a quick little novelette in hers,
Mm-hmm.
but in return, she'd write something in mine. But she's lacking confidence that she knows my lore enough to write something. So she's looking forward to reading Gemstone because she's very girlish.
Yeah.
She's done some of the lines for Crown of Blood, but she's admitted she's not sure if she'd like the story. But it's just she doesn't like dark stuff like it. Um, she's very sweet, so she likes Mia's, like a story like a Disney princess love story stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But she writes it very complex and with philosophical details from it. But she liked one romantic novel I wrote, and she likes what little she's read of Gemstone. So she's going to read Gemstone. She's very excited for it because she loves Lord of the Rings. But she's one person. There's Black Knight, whom I'm friendly with, who might do a bit here and there. But I'm actually co-authoring an anthology called Valralthan and Orin, or something like that, with an author called Michael B. Morgan,
Mm-hmm.
and on Substack. And what we're doing is I write um, an entire section, like an entire couple, like 3 to 6 paragraphs. Then I bounce it to him, and he writes the next 6 paragraphs, and then he bounces it back to me, and we try to one up each other with the story.
Mm-hmm.
And it follows an iron elf and a wolfram.
Mm-hmm.
Wolfram is a dog man of sorts, and an iron elf is an elf who can use iron because most elves are fey, so they can't really use iron, like you know what I mean, like regular iron. They need to specialized iron of sorts. But iron elves can use regular iron, and they're not really archers. They're more knights and warriors. They're Noldor, for those who know Tolkien. So Valralton and Orin are a duo, kind of like a buddy cop night drama, where they go around causing trouble, and they get into trouble together. And so Michael and I are co-authoring this. So I am getting to be more and more comfortable with others writing in a bit of my mythos, but um, uh, Dan is very careful about um, who's let in. I'm also a little careful about it,
Mm-hmm.
but the thing is, we're currently discussing it, and we're trying to figure out a system that would leave us both comfortable, even as we are still setting up a lot of stories and having fun and writing as more and more stories and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that's fascinating, and interesting. Something to keep in mind for future, because it does seem like it's as you described, the characters are there to service the story you want to see in the setting, and the setting you've worked on since you're a teenager. And it does seem like a vast and expansive setting that we're only really seeing a glimpse of in Crown of Blood, and that's fascinating. I actually am looking forward to Brotherhood of the Gemstone right now. Um,
Hmm.
so just to clarify, this is more or less for the benefit of the audience there after the stream is over. You have Substack, a Patreon, on your Twitter, of course, as well as I think this is the only one of your mythos that's book of your mythos that's currently on the Amazon right now. Is that correct?
I have several other books on Amazon. There's the like 40 or 60 page Victor Tempestson,
Mm-hmm.
which I will beg people not to go and find that. I shouldn't have mentioned it. That thing wasn't run for the editor, and it's going to have to be later. There's Swift Shadow Murders, which is a mystery romance fantasy novel. It's a little funny. Um, it's it's um, it's a fun little novel. I had fun writing. There's Caladbolg,
Mm-hmm.
which is a 600-page book, which is a Arthurian style epic novel. It's a standalone. It was written as a prequel to Gemstone as well, but it follows a character called Braden, who um, becomes the king of Eriu, or Ireland,
Mm-hmm.
and after it's been divided for many, many years. But Braden, for those who might be curious, he was inspired by the 1980s bullies characters in those teen dramas, and I decided to make him the main character
Wow.
and the future and the great king to be of Ireland. Because why not have the bully be the hero? I thought it would be terribly funny to do that. But
That's definitely an interesting choice.
at the same time, Braden, um, for the gemstone, is father to one character and nephew to another character.
Mm-hmm.
So these two members of my brotherhood or fellowship, if you will, are actually relations of his. So Braden is someone who in Gemstone is referenced several times, like a King Dan, Under the Mountain, but he himself does not appear. Caladbolg is his story, but it's also the story of Eriu, and it's setting up where Eriu will be at the time of Gemstone.
Yeah.
In turn, there's also, well, there's Crown of Blood, and hopefully at the end of February there will be Wormsbane, which is set up for, um, uh, Britia. And I have plans for a story called, about the usurper Raidwald, who is a character whom, um, well, I like him, but I'm not going to discuss him too much because I've not fleshed out every idea about him.
Mm-hmm.
But he has a lot of references. And he's the Britian Thistle King of sorts. He's not, but he didn't like his thistles, and he's much more Conan-like and brutal than Simon. And but he's also someone who's a lot lonelier, a person.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so um, but once a lot of the current year stories are finished, Dan and I are probably going to get back to writing our prequel stuff as well, because we want to finish Baron Cub,
Mm-hmm.
which you can find the first few chapters of that story on Railroad, which I really like that story. It's basically Wolf and Cub, but except Germanic, Saxon invasion, but with a father and a son journeying together to avenge their fallen kin.
Yeah.
But
All right. Well.
that that one's probably going to be an audio drama at some point, but it's going to be a massive epic story.
All right.
That's like 2 years away from now.
That certainly sounds you have a lot. You definitely have a lot on your plate, and both you
Yeah.
and Dan are doing yeoman's work and getting this all sorted out and fit into
Mm.
place. Definitely a lot to look forward to, and I'm glad that glad to have you here to talk to us about it today. Um,
Sure.
I'm going to have your Patreon and your Amazon link and your YouTube link in the pinned comment here for so the future viewers can
Oh, thank you.
have a link to it there to basically just promote your work there, as we're always eager to do. And this podcast is one of the reasons we started it, was essentially to promote independent authors and creators such
Great.
as yourself. Uh, so I want to say thank you for coming on tonight today. This is probably about a good time to call it. So
Yeah.
yeah, thank you for coming on today and talking about the Crown of Blood. There, it was an interesting read, definitely interesting stylistically, and curiously, now that I know what we're looking forward to in the future. It makes more sense why you wrote it the way you did. Both you
Mm.
yourself and Dan, and the rather extensive universe that it's set in and opening up towards.
Can I
Um,
ask a question?
yes, go ahead.
Who is your favorite character?
Am I allowed to say cattle?
Yes.
It's cattle.
He's awesome.
Not biased at all. Not because I'm biased him at all.
No, no. He's a great character because well, everybody's trying to jump in front of him for the crown, and it's actually his by right.
And then it ends up in Shiamon's head instead.
Well, that's how Kettle would have wanted it. Kettle loves Simon more than he loves anyone else.
Well, yeah, he's like his baby brother. He's always been protecting him.
Yeah, but in turn, he loved him more than some of his own sons, who proved disappointments. Simon could never disappoint him. And, well, I'll give a little taste of what Crown of Blood Part 2 will show,
Hmm.
and just say that Simon, as we see him as an old man, is constantly asking himself, what would Kettle do? And is still flashbacking to when he was a child and Kettle would protect him. So the bond is the most important part of Crown of Blood Part 2.
So Kettle being Sir Kay to Simon's King Arthur, essentially.
Yeah, precisely.
Oh, that's a wonderful relationship. All right.
Mm,
Well, thank you again for coming along, Joe. And I'm sorry Dan couldn't be here.
thank
And I
you.
also, again, also apologies that Alahari couldn't be here for this as well. Hopefully, if when Gemstone comes out, we'll give it a read over, and hopefully we'll be able to see you again in around a year's
Oh, I would
time
love
from
that.
now.
Or hopefully, in just, if I could just get round up the cash for it, and um, hopefully by like October or November, we'll have that damn thing sorted out. But I've got someone trying to find a publisher, I will admit, um, for it, who will sort through the damn thing. And if that's the case, it would be out sooner. But I can't promise that because I don't know where that person's at with um, that. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's. Uh, but like I said, Dan and I are looking at options, and also, I'll be honest, at grants. And if we can get even one grant, we can get this thing probably out by probably by the fall. So fingers crossed, we'll get the funding and we'll get the damn thing out.
God willing, indeed. I hope everything works out for you too.
Yeah, same.
All right. Well, thank you again for coming on, and also to all of our viewers there, thank you for being with us tonight. It was a pleasure to have you with us. Uh, I'll see you next time on Zeitguys, when I think me and Harry are going to review the Frankenstein movie, and as well as the book. So it was a pleasure to have you here all, and have a lovely night, everyone.